like, hey, as a fellow circus performer trying to make it in tech, help. Just send help.
Are you in the market for a used red nose?
Bruh, no, I have like so many of them. This is gonna sound weird, but I have a ton of them because
recording. Welcome to the end of week 7. It's pretty awesome. I can't believe that there's only one more week left.
Oh wow, I thought there were 2 more weeks. Okay, wow, I can't count.
Is that right? We have one more week, Steve.
One more.
Yeah, one more.
One more week.
Yeah.
That is it. Awesome. So we'll do demos. I'm so sorry that I blew it with Mindy. I'm so sorry. I feel terrible, but I'm really excited about the conversation we're going to have today about interviewing and job searching. And I'd love for it to be as like free form as possible, like to make it as useful for all of you as possible. Because I know, I mean, I can only imagine that all of us have gone through our fair share of interviewing and job hunting, all of us. So this will be useful for everyone. I'm sure that I will learn lots of things. So, but let's get started with demos. So Steve is going to run demos this week.
Yeah, are there any volunteers who would like to kick off demos? Either, I think, a prettier welcome page, or Scott and Elise with the modal or the details page.
I'm down to do the details page.
Yeah.
I was just waiting for to restart the server because I had 2 of them and one of them was not working properly. So give me 1 second and I will share my screen. Oh, it says that the host has disabled screen sharing.
Whoops. Let me see. One participant. Oh, I see. There it is. And now see if you can do it.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome. Okay, so for this week's AC, we were tasked with adding a view details option to the list. So what we originally did is added a link. So it goes to a separate page and it gives you the name, number of purchases, the next time you might want to purchase, and your last purchase date, which we reformatted so it's easier to read for the shopper or the user, I should say. We also created a back button to go back to the list. And if you haven't actually purchased the item, we made it so the last purchase isn't visible just yet. So that is the visual demo. Now for the code. Oops. Okay, so Scott and I created an item detail component where you can, this is the link that goes to the back that displays our back button. We have our item details, the name, number of purchases, you might want to purchase this. And then we made it so this portion covers the aspect where if you haven't made a purchase, it's not visible, but if you do, then it'll show up. And then up top, we created a last purchase variable that we ran into an error where the date was showing up as a string, I believe. And so this makes sure that it does a double check to make sure there aren't any empty strings. And one more thing, since we created a separate route to go to the item detail, we wanted to make sure that we removed the shopping and add item buttons from that page. So we separated those out into their own component. And that's pretty much it. I don't think I left anything out. Scott, do you have any feedback? Anything else you want to add?
The only thing was the problem we had with that date was that if last purchased was an empty string, trying to make a date object out of that caused an error. So that's why we had to solve for that. And then, yeah, that was the only addition I had.
Any questions?
So I have a question. Awesome work, you two. This is great. I was curious to know how you handled items with spaces in their name, since I noticed you were using the item name in the URL.
We actually used the normalized name that Sarah came up with, because it has all spaces removed and it's all lowercase, so that it makes finding that object or that item easier. I think it's in the list share. We normalized that name to all lowercase and no spaces.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember. I think that was like week 2 or week 3.
Mm-hmm.
It takes the spaces out of, if it's like red apples, it'll combine that into one word.
Yep.
Okay. I thought I had left a comment. The only thing I would say to that is the advantage of using an ID versus a name is that someone here, in this case, it's probably unlikely that someone's going to bookmark the details view of their page. But more often than not, you want to use an ID. You want to use something that's going to be consistent regardless of anything the user might possibly change.
Right.
But this totally works and is fine as well. But I would just say, more often than not, you want to use an ID. Lauren, Jason, would you agree with that usually, or?
I'd agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that'll introduce
one thing to keep in mind
a lot, and be like, why the hell are we talking about this? When they talk about functions having item potency or a route having an item potency, right now, if someone was to change the name of their item, it'd be 2 different ways to get to the same item, which without having an ID means that your function is not pure in the sense that if you give it the same inputs, it may not always give you the same outputs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where IDs help there, so that no matter what input you get in, if the ID is the input, you'll always get back that item.
And if I understand Sarah's point, the URL is much harder to read. Is that something you really care about? How to what degree do you care if the URL is readable?
You care about that mostly if it's like a front end like blog where the URL might be part of something that gets parsed. But we're in a web app world where like our URL, especially if you think in the sense of REST, right? And like using an ID is the better way to go, so that you can just represent all the states of an item, including when its name changes. Whereas if you use its name and that name changes, that item, again, it kind of gets hard to know that you're getting the same item back.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say being a dev working on an app, your attention now focuses to the URL. But go to Amazon, go to Netflix, and look at the URLs there. No one ever looks at the URL.
Right.
It's the URLs there really.
That's true.
Sorry about this, Steve. I was gonna say,
Yeah.
those URLs aren't being crawled for anything, right? Like they don't. A pretty URL in an app case or a web app case will not net you as many benefits as it would in a blog or pure content case, which still at that point that's just a front end representation, right? The server that's serving that content still doesn't care about the pretty names itself.
Okay, so that's like a mask of some sort in those cases.
Right. Of sorts, yeah. It's like it's making it human readable and bot crawlable and all that other jazz.
I feel like I remember that comment now that you brought it up, Steve. Like,
Yeah, no worries. It's not super important. It was just something I wanted to keep in mind. Like you more often than not wouldn't prefer using an ID.
Yeah.
Yep.
But since I guess we have like making items pretty for next week, maybe we can just throw that one in there too.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's totally, it's totally your call. And I mean, the nice thing about this application is that the names on the shopping list also have to be unique, if I recall correctly. So you shouldn't run into errors, but like just what Steve said, it's a lot more common to find the ID in the URL than the name of something. Cool.
Cool.
I loved that you had 2 solutions this week, that you liked this one, and then you came up with the modal solution too. I like both of them, honestly.
The modal is still slightly broken, unfortunately.
Yeah, we tried to fix that the last minute, it wasn't happening, so we might include that in the prettier.
All right.
Cool. Well, yeah, it was
Nice
great.
work.
All right, cool. And then Miles, do you want to show off the prettier welcome page?
I actually don't have it. My apologies. I had a really hectic week. I'm actually at my parents' house on my phone. I had a weird roommate situation, so I had to leave. But I will be going back tomorrow, so I will touch base with Sarah, and my solution will be possibly to do like a video demo and then post it in Slack.
Can you see us, Miles?
I can see you, yes.
Would it help if I shared my screen and went to your branch, your deployed branch?
That would help, because I
Okay.
think Sarah has it, and I pulled it and it doesn't look like it's up there, so I'm not really sure what to do, because I tried to look at it and I'm not really sure how to do it from my phone. Like I downloaded the Git thing on my phone and I can't really figure out how to do it from here.
I just sent you the link in Slack chat.
Oh, thank you.
On a side note, I'm very happy that you're at your parents'.
Oh, Elise has heard this whole drama from the beginning, so it's been yeah, it got to the point where I just left. But I also am putting a deposit on a new place, so I'll be moving very soon.
Nice.
Super soon. Thank God.
It's so cute.
Oh,
The eggs and the smiley faces.
oh,
very cute.
She did such a good job. I honestly, the only input that I really put was like the colors and telling her how to kind of get the colors to make it look a little more thingy, but she did all of it. So I love it. I just gave her like some suggestions for the background.
Makes me think of like a 1960s kitchen wallpaper or something.
Yeah, it's super kitschy, and I love that. And so Elise picked this really great beach theme, like for a color scheme, which I love it. And once we kind of like settled on what color goes where and how like it came together really nicely. And I loved this one mainly because like fashion design and color schemes are my thing. So I really enjoyed this week. Let's see.
The heart-shaped egg is a nice touch.
That is adorable. And that's, again, all Sarah, which ironically, I love hearts. Like I have my company logo is a bunch of hearts and my tattoo is a bunch of hearts. So I love that she pulled that together.
This curved egghead thing is cool. I just caught on that that's actually, she bent text somehow. That's cool.
I love it. Super cute.
I love it.
It is adorable.
I can't wait to see like what happens over the next week, like how that bleeds into the rest of the app. It looks really cute. And I love the name. It's adorable.
Yeah, that's what I'm excited for this week is how do we tie the entire app together? And that's a fun path to venture on. I think my favorite thing is definitely the color. I think given, like, I love Tiffany blue. It's just a great color in general. Makes you want to spend money.
Miles,
Yes.
do you remember the black that you guys chose has like a peak and the green
Yes. So
Do you know why or where that, like why you decided that? Like, and how you decided?
Oh, why that methodology? Simply just because it's an eye thing. When you're putting it against white and if you choose a color scheme, it's traditionally in design, it's good practice to choose a black that fits your scheme. So if you choose a scheme that has like green, like we chose one that was like blue, teal, green, and an orange. So when it came to a black, since there was so many like green skewing colors, I chose a black that was a little green skewing. It just makes it come together a little nicer. Whereas if you choose a solid black, solid black is really hard. In design, they always tell you never to choose straight up like 000 black, to always choose a black that incorporates a color you use. It just ties it together nicer. It's not so harsh on your eyes. It makes it easier for it to look like it goes together.
Cool. That's awesome.
Well, I'm happy to announce that I've been running this branch through WAVE, the Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool, and everything's good except for two minor alerts. One is there's no page region, meaning thus far on the page you don't have like a ARIA region equals main, which is fine, right? Like we can fix that in this last week. But your color contrast is on point, your form label features are on point, and your structural headers look like they're on point as well, with your H1s and H2s. So solid work.
Oh, cool. And also the black, not choosing a specific dark black, it also luckily doesn't mess with your color contrast. So you can always skew a black to a different color and you won't have to worry about not fitting whatever he said. Because it's still going to be the same kind of black contrast no matter what you do.
Yeah, this is solid. Y'all are well prepared. WAVE likes all your pages.
Cool. Well, that's great work from both teams. Like everybody every week has just done like amazing work. So another good one in the books.
Nice.
Is it possible to actually go to the welcome screen, or did I?
Oh, right. You're right. This isn't actually the welcome screen, is it?
No, it's not.
So I need
Oh,
to.
that's because you already had a token.
Yeah.
Right.
Or you can go to an incognito window if you go back to your, go to GitHub. Yeah. Nice tagline. Cute.
Eggs, bread, cheese, and all the things you need.
That is all I need.
I've got a mic. I'll record your commercial. Eggs, bread,
Honestly, it came flying out of my mouth, and I was like, okay, yeah, just halfway through, I was like, just keep going, let's go with it. I love slogans. I love stuff like that. I just didn't seem like, for me, if I was like, there has to be some kind of like thing there.
Yeah, a good sub header / hook to bring you in always does a good job of making someone feel welcome. Instead of just being like the thing with two imposing boxes. Do you have a token? Yes or no. If not, create one. It's like a good tagline just totally changes the personality of the site.
Yeah, like it makes it fun. It makes it funky. You read it and you're like, aw, thank you. I feel very secure that I'm going to get everything I need here.
Also, you're welcome to all of you, because I know the next website you look at that doesn't have a tagline, you're going to hear my voice going, do you have a token? Would you like to log in? Yes or no? That's how I feel every time I go to etrade.com. It's just like, do you want to log in? Do you want to see how much money you don't have? It's like, no, actually, you know what? Forget it. I don't care about my retirement plan. I'm going to just go back to the real world. It's fine. This is scary. Oh, yeah, I forgot we record these. All right, so this will forever live in YouTube.
Internet, you're welcome.
I am a goof.
I'm going to sample your voice on something just because of that one day. gonna be hearing a song on the radio. You're like, wait a minute.
Like,
I need more royalties.
All right, great demos, everybody. Love it. Super excited. So, real quick before we jump into talking about job hunting, I had posted it in our channel that this week and offered a suggestion that everyone's going to kind of work together as one big team. And it seemed like everyone was for that idea instead of splitting up into two pairs. I think that will be I think it'll be a good setup for creating the overall look and feel for the app.
Yeah.
So cool. All right, let's talk about interviewing. So since I wasn't here for the first, could I share my screen, Scott?
Oh yeah. Sorry, I always forget.
Thank you. What was I gonna say? Oh, so I wasn't here at the beginning. So can people share where they are, like in their journey in terms of, okay, I'm looking for my first dev job, or I've been working as a developer, or I just would love to hear where you are right now and try to help kind of tailor the talk to that. I'm gonna start with Elise.
Okay. For me, I'm looking for my first dev job. My focus is more so front end, but full stack is also an option for me, but definitely front end.
Is what you're most interested in. And then did you go to a boot camp? Is that your background?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And then Miles, how about you? Oh wait, she needs to do something. Oh
I'm
yes,
here.
Jason's. Oh yeah, okay. So I know you have some interviews coming up for a dev advocate position, is that right?
Yes. So I actually wasn't looking for a job. Like I was just happy at home. And somebody emailed me and asked me if they could set up a meeting. I'm part of this like group called BYOC, like Bring Your Own Coffee. Show up on Tuesdays, talk about our lives, all that good stuff. And somebody from that group reached out when I was moving, and she said, "Hey, can we sit down and talk? I have an opportunity for you." And I was in the middle of moving, and things were going weird, and I never really got back to her. But then somebody on Twitter reached out to me and said, "Hey, I have somebody that I have a job suggestion for you. I know this is weird. I don't really know you, but this seems like a good fit. So can I set you up with my friend? What's your email address?" And it turned out it was the same woman.
Oh, okay.
So she works for Cloud Foundry, and they're hiring for a developer advocate. And coincidentally, I have worked with Change Catalyst, who hosts Tech Inclusion. And so they do a lot of developer advocacy. So I've always kind of known that like when I got into tech, it would be something like dev advocate leaning. I never really saw myself as a developer. So yeah, I'm really excited about the interview. There was only 5 of us on like interviewing, and I'm the first one. So
nice. Cool. And then Scott.
I graduated from Epicodus a year ago, and the CTO of the company where I did my internship came to me about a month after I was done with the month-long internship that Epicodus ends with, and kind of put me into I guess like a freelance contract thing. So I've been working, that's where I've been getting money, is just working on that app.
Okay.
I have been working, but I haven't had the experience of interviewing and getting a dev job. So that's all in the future.
Okay, cool. Great. So we're going to talk about job hunting, kind of steps to take. We're going to talk about what interviews can be like and just offer some personal experience. And then I think I'd also like to talk about how to stay motivated in your job search, because it can be it takes a lot of energy to search for jobs, and it takes a lot of like personal fortitude to keep plugging through and getting rejections, not hearing back about interviews, but to keep going anyway. So maybe some tips on how to keep that going and stay motivated. So let's see. So first, talking about planning your job search, you're going to want to think about what your resources are. What are job boards? What are some common job boards actually? I don't necessarily use job boards. I get emails from like dice.com, or I look at LinkedIn sometimes, or Indeed, which I think is a Minnesota thing. But what are other job boards that people maybe are using?
Stack Overflow has a lot of good stuff.
Oh yeah, Stack Overflow has a lot of good like job ads. Yep.
I have this one, it's called Muya. They cater to boot camp grads, and they send you like a list, or they send you like a list in an email of stuff that I guess would be interested in like hiring boot camp grads.
Mm-hmm.
So I can put that in the chat so it's available for everyone to hop on to.
Oh, and so thank you for triggering my memory, Steve. A lot of times newsletters, different developer newsletters will have job listings. So like CSS Tricks has, or CodePen has a newsletter that they send out, and they have jobs that are included there. I know Elm Lang has job listings in their newsletters, and I'm sure there are lots of those. So newsletters are another good source. I got my last job via Twitter. I just posted out on Twitter that I was looking, listed what my skills were and the kind of position that I was looking in, and I got and I have a very tiny following. I'm not a Twitter personality, and that's how I found my job. I never would have found the company that I work for without that. So following lots of people that are doing the kind of work that you're interested in might help lead your job search a little bit. And it's also a good way to kind of stay up with what's happening in the industry, is just following people on Twitter that are doing the work that you're interested in. Let's see. It's a great idea to keep your LinkedIn profile up to date. Number one, it will help inform your resume writing. It's a good idea to always just circle back. Okay, I'm going to add this project that I worked on to LinkedIn while it's still kind of fresh in my mind. And then a lot of times job applications will take that data from your LinkedIn application. So if that's up to date, it will make that process a lot smoother. And then I'm not a great networker, but I know a lot of people that have gotten opportunities from going to meetups. I know so many are virtual right now, but meetups are a great place to meet people. Recruiters go to meetups, but people that work at companies where maybe you'd like to work go to meetups. So that's a good place. What are some other resources that people know about that I haven't mentioned here?
Let's see, LinkedIn, Twitter. Well, yeah, Twitter was great for me. That's actually how I met Andrew. So that's how I got at least 6 of my first interviewing opportunities out in the Bay. Everywhere Andrew went, I interviewed at some point. So referrals are always huge. And that's where like friendly networks come into play. I've got a lot of opportunities from doing open source work with friends, or like just when someone on Twitter is like, hey, I got this cool extension and I want people to help test. Just even striking up a convo and be like, hey, I'll help test that. That seems interesting. That's netted a couple of opportunities. newsletters like JavaScript Weekly and Ruby Weekly and Python Weekly, all the weeklies basically.
Mm-hmm.
And also the salary comparison boards. Like Glassdoor now has like a huge job database. Like the other ones are starting to kind of pick up as well. And also the interview practice websites themselves. Like Interview Cake, I know has like a lot of resources on what jobs are coming around.
And that one.
Triple Byte, which allows you to like take a test, but then also get into their network. Same thing with Hired.com. But yeah, the practicing sites are now starting to get into that as well.
This is a weird one, but Y Combinator. If
Oh,
you
okay.
go to the website, they have a huge, like they have a list of like companies they funded that are now hiring. So I like looking on there. There's quite a few.
And even also on Y Combinator, but Hacker News, the first day of each month, there'll be a thread of like who's hiring, and then there'll be lots of startups posting.
That was Hacker News, Steve?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Not new.
Y Combinator. I always forget about that site.
All right, so there are tons of resources that are out there. I will say, so with this talk, like there's no one way to get a job. There's not a prescribed path, and probably every job that you get from now on will have a very different path. But these are some ideas. Polishing up your GitHub profile is a really good idea. So there's a way to kind of feature some projects on your home GitHub page. And so pull in some projects in that space that you're especially proud of, like that's maybe your most up-to-date work. And then make sure that the READMEs for those projects are really well fleshed out, that people know how to pull down that information and start up the app. It's almost exactly like how we're writing PR descriptions here at Collab Lab with that amount of detail. You want to give good detail about what that project is about. So having a nice polished GitHub is great. And then this, I think, for me, this has been one of the most important things that I practiced when I was interviewing, and one of the most important things that I would forget and then get burned on because I wasn't prepared in my interviews. What are the specific stories that you can tell about you as a person? Who are you? And what are the technical challenges that you faced? So think of a question that an interviewer might ask, like, tell me about a technical problem that you encountered in working on a project. What did you do? How did you solve that problem, and what was the outcome? Like, that's a typical kind of question that you might have. And then you want to have a story ready that says, well, I participated in this group called Collab Lab, and it's this really great experience working with developers remotely. We collaborated on a project, and we worked on a particular issue where the user wanted to display details about the item that they were shopping for, right? And so that you have this project that you're talking about, that you had a problem that you encountered, and what were those like specific steps that you used to solve that problem, or how did you overcome a particular issue? It's really great to have really planned out. I mean, for me, I'm a planner, but have those stories ready to tell in interviews, because you're going to get questions, and then just knowing what your stories are ahead of time will help you be able to answer those questions. Does that make sense? What questions do you have about that?
I have a question about more so like the LinkedIn, because my background is like retail based versus anything tech based. And what I find myself running into is like how to describe, like, I'm in this group that's trying to help people get jobs, and they're like, you have to write a blurb. So like that LinkedIn blurb where you're supposed to describe X, Y, so you accomplish Z, but it's like I haven't really done that much in the tech field, so I don't feel like I am fully adequate to write it. Is the issue that I run into. Like,
Did you do projects? What kind of projects did you do in your boot camp?
so we did a lot of like projects similar to this. Like I've worked on a sleep tracker app, a banking app, trying to remember the other ones, and one bigger one, which was where we had a stakeholder involved and I had to help serialize or unserialize PHP data for this company called Sauti Databank. But I still feel like I don't know what to write. And I don't know if that's maybe just me judging myself or what.
I think that, so I was a boot camp grad. Did I say that already? I was a boot camp grad. We had a really great community manager who helped us in the job search process. And she recommended, like for each, like for that kind of capstone project that I would call it, and maybe for maybe an individual project that you worked on, have like a section. So for that capstone project that you worked with this company, this was the problem that you were trying to solve. Like this was the project. These are the technologies that you used. And then if there's a link to that particular project, you can include that. But like maybe 3 bullet points about what that process looked like and your personal role in that project. So like, this is the company, this is what we built for them. These are the 3 things that it did, and these are the technologies that we used. Is a nice way to summarize that kind of information.
So basically it's ignore your past history, your past work history.
Oh, no. So no, like I think that is actually what really, and I'm sorry, I'm talking too much, but like you bring a wealth of experience we all bring a wealth of experience to any kind of job that we'll have. You don't have to be the chancellor of code to get a technical job. Like you really don't have to, but you do need to be like a good person and show up on time and have a good work ethic and do all of those things that you have to do in any kind of job. So don't be scared at all of experience that is not related to being a developer, because all of that experience applies.
Yeah, I would expand upon that, saying that if you think of tech as the vehicle and not the destination, then it helps you to easier tie your story in, right? One thing that I've seen work with a couple of former students of mine is they'll build a project on the side that actually relates to a challenge in their prior history field of the industry they were in. So if they were in healthcare, they would build an app that actually helped show both their expertise in healthcare and whatever they did, combined with their newfound skills to be able to build the product with their technical skills, right? You should never hide or feel like you have to minimize any part of your past, especially in the sense that for millions of reasons, right? But for the biggest reason in terms of your technical careers going forward, that's your secret sauce. That's your play. No one else has had the experience you've had in the industries you've been in. And so if you want to stay in your industry and you want to bring that in, right, it becomes, well, I know how to deal with customers in this arena. I know what the market looks like in this arena. I've dealt with these challenges, and now I have a whole new set of skills that I can apply to problem solving where this time, instead of the tool being a hammer, the tool is now my keyboard, right? And that's, I think, would help a lot in terms of how do you make that blurb really stand out, is by combining, you know, the work that you did. You all finished your boot camps. That in and of itself is a significant achievement. It doesn't matter if there's one boot camp grad or 5 million boot camp grads. Everybody had a different journey, right? And so by kind of keying in on that, some of your capstone and other projects and your prior work, and marrying the two in terms of your experiences, you'll be able to craft a narrative and a story that really shows people everything about you, not just, oh, I am a boot camp grad, right? Because I think that's the fear that sometimes we have for folks who come into the industry from a different arenas, is that someone go, oh, you're just a boot camp grad, right? And it's like, no, I am Elise. I have this retail background, and I apply these plus my newfound problem skill set in creating tech for change, right? Or however you craft that narrative. So even if you don't have a lengthy resume in technology in terms of writing code today, you have more than enough adequate amount of experience, plus experience in prior industries, to be able to craft that narrative.
And if I can add a little bit more to that, even like coming from a background that didn't include tech, and kind of going back to even what Lauren was talking about with the stories that you tell for these questions, like how do you work on a team? How do you deal with people that might be kind of difficult?
Well,
so like for me personally, like when I would get asked those questions for my first job, it was talking about working with other people in a music group, right? Like I'm talking about, you can take those questions and frame them from your background. You don't have to think about it like, how did I work on a tech team? You can say, how did I work on a retail team within a music group? How did I work on even with, you know, with customers or anything like that? Like you can take all of those things that are in your past and apply them to where you are right now. Like take those transcendent skills that you have, because you're going to be using them later anyway.
Can I ask one more question and then we can move on? Sorry. So I don't know if you guys experienced this, but so, and I'm not trying to boast about what I've done in the past, but I've worked for Nike retail, Apple retail, and I was a receptionist at Slack. And when people read my resume, they're like, oh, so you worked at Slack, so you already had a job at coding. And I'm like, no, like, has that happened to you before? Like, it's kind of an awkward conversation to have. I'm like, yeah, actually, no, I didn't code there, sorry. But I am still a good coder though. But I don't really know how to approach that, or if that's happened to anyone else.
I used to work at this company called Grabango, and I worked there when they first hired the like entry level team that like goes through their data. And now that they're actually getting a lot of feedback in the Bay Area, and they're getting a lot of money in the Bay, like a lot of VC money, like in Berkeley, if I wear my sweatshirt, people will come up to me and be like, oh my God, you work there. And I'm like, yes, no, but not that role. And I actually had somebody that they hired as a like developer, or he did something like super up there, like obviously making 6 figures. Like he came up to me at like Target one day and was like, hey, I work at Grabango too. And I said, well, I work there, but I don't work in that office. Like I'm one of the data miners. And he was just like, oh, that's interesting. And then I did explain, like, and it was when I was in boot camp, and I explained like, yeah, I'm in boot camp. Like I do, like the experience made me want to learn how to code. So he actually was shocked and he went back to the office, because when I was first hired, I was actually in the other office, and he asked all the people there, like, do you remember this girl named Miles? And they would all be like, oh yeah, the circus girl. Like, how is she? Like, did you meet her? Did you run into her? So people do, like, I feel like you worked at Slack. That's like a huge company. People do like talk, people do remember, people do like, you know, I think if it was me, I would go back and apply at Slack, because you already worked there.
Yeah,
like
another benefit to that too. is that even though you didn't directly have a role as a programmer, you were working in the culture of a highly available technical company, which means even if your efforts didn't directly lead to delivering super performant, cross, horizontally scalable, always on web scale, planet scale, and all these other scale words everyone loves to use these days, right? The work you did contributed to the culture and environment of a successful tech company, right? And so there are things that are going to rub off on you and that you also contributed to in the way of that culture. So you can have the the explanation of like, hey, well, I wasn't an engineer there yet. Like this is before my journey into where I am now. But the experience, like Miles just talked about how the experience led to wanting to know more about how to be an engineer, right? And going into boot camp. There's ways you can tie in your experiences, even if they were in a non-technical function at a technical company, that still adds value to where you are now. Because some of those experiences will pop up. And once you're on the job, no matter where you are next, you're gonna start hearing things like, oh, I remember at the time somebody yelled that out at Slack when like Slack went down, right? So like all those things are gonna come back, and then in weird ways, you're gonna be like, oh, so I've got tech experience even when I wasn't even programming.
That's good advice. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cool. All right, this stuff, I'm not going to give you a ton of advice about resumes and cover letters, but Steve, you put a comment on the side. What did you want to talk about? You said this is what got me my first job.
Oh, I was just going to say having a portfolio site that I just built from scratch and didn't use any frameworks or anything. I just, at the time, it was like all PHP and vanilla JavaScript. And then like I had built this quiz app that was like, I don't know, just like a BuzzFeed quiz type kind of thing, but that was all vanilla JavaScript. And just being able to talk about how those things worked, in addition to, I built some like Angular JS apps on there too. And then being able to have those two set aside, that's like, well, I'm using Angular, but I know what's going on under the hood. Like that was a big notch in my belt to be able to talk about that in the interview.
Cool. So
I have a question.
Sure.
So I'm not going for a developer role. I'm actually going for a developer advocate role. So in my perspective, I guess I want to know, like, and I actually didn't finish boot camp because I got a scholarship and we could choose to go through, like we only had to do the first 15 weeks. So after that, we could choose to keep going, or we could choose to just take the curriculum and do what we wanted. But I signed up knowing that I was only going to do like a third of the curriculum. And I don't ever think like, I mean, I think at some point, like it would be nice to be like a developer, but I want to know, how do I approach a job where I'm advocating for developers? Like I understand like code is hard because I went to boot camp, but like how do I guess understand developers to be able to advocate for them to have what they need in their jobs?
So I think one thing that could help from folks that I know who've had different types of developer advocate roles is, let's say you're at a company that has a technical function and you're in a developer advocate role where you're like advocating for the tools amongst the developer community. One thing you've learned through what you're building now with your teammates and through boot camp is the pain points of engineers when they have to connect with different platforms. Tap into that, right? You remember what those frustrations are like. You have a point of relation that you now can authentically speak with different communities about in the process of being an engineer. If it's like an internal advocacy function in terms of like the tools and things that people need within a role, you can still pull from a lot of the same experiences. I would say, think about your experiences in being an engineer and working on the types of challenges and problems you've had. And when you're in those roles of advocacy, how you can show that either the place you're at solves those pain points and be able to speak to that, or just like how you can build more things to actually get rid of pain points that maybe the company's customers who are engineers are feeling, right? Like, hey, this API is really terse and hard to work with. you can tap into your technical skills and say, hey, well, maybe there's some ways we can talk with our product team to make this easier to adopt.
Cool, thank you. That makes a lot of sense.
Cool. And then I know, let's see, Scott, I know you had a question about kind of resume, cover letter, that you end up spending like a lot of time updating it for everything. So I would say resume wise, like depending on what kind of job you're looking for, you want to tailor your resume for that. So I'm a front end focused person. So I have a resume that looks, let's see, let me share it. So it's not like, oh, super front endy and crazy, but you know, it has a little bit of polish in a front end sort of UX sense. My sense is that the information that I get from out on the web is that you don't want your resume, sorry, to be more than 2 pages. So you want to trim it. You want to make sure, I think the most important things are like, you just want to make sure that you don't have grammatical errors or spelling errors on your resume. I think really those are the most important things. And then cover letter, I get mixed information about whether or not to include a cover letter. I always do, but I feel like it might be a more old-fashioned practice, but I do include a cover letter. Having said that, I don't spend a ton of time updating it and tailoring it every single time, but I do. So I have an intro paragraph that introduces myself and says I'm applying for such and such position with your company. I would be a great fit for this company because XYZ. Then there are body paragraphs about the work that I've done. And then in the conclusion, I try to tie together that company with my skills. So I spend a little bit of time in the intro and in the conclusion of that cover letter, kind of tailoring it for that specific job. But I don't spend a ton of time changing my resume because in general, for me, I'm looking for a specific kind of job.
I'm not sure that the questions I have or follow off of that directly, but to me they're kind of related. Sort of like this has come up a couple of times in this talk so far already. It's like, what kind of job are you looking for? I mean, at this point, I'm just like, I've code. Like I want to code. So to a certain degree, it doesn't matter. I mean, I happen to know that my front end is not my strength, but it's mostly a matter of time put into that area. So you know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, it's hard to know. I know when I was first starting out too, it's sort of like I sort of thought that front end was my favorite, but I didn't really know. So I was pretty open to applying for all different kinds of jobs. And I would say that, like, don't be afraid to apply for all different kinds of jobs because you never know. Like, you never know, one, if you're a great fit for that job, or two, if it's something that, oh, maybe it doesn't sound that interesting, but you never know. It might be something, a company that you really love working for, or a company that like the work that they do is really interesting to you. So I would like keep those horizons open is what I would say. Let's see. Okay, kinds of interviews. So this is important. I haven't done a lot of interviewing of people, at least in technology, but I've been through many technology interviews. So often you will have some kind of a screening call, often with a recruiter or someone in a more HR function, just going over maybe not technical questions, although they might have 1 or 2 technical questions for you during that initial screening call, but it's more asking you what your past experience is, why are you interested in working for our company, and again, maybe a technical question, but probably nothing super deep. Then you will often have a screening call with somebody who works on the team, like maybe the hiring manager for that team. And that is typically a more technical conversation. So again, you'll go over your background, but they'll ask you probably more detailed questions. Like, for example, if it's a front end kind of position, they'll ask you more detailed kind of JavaScript-y questions, for example, or CSS questions, just to get a feel for your skills broadly and to see what kind of work you've done in the past. And then let's see. So some companies will have you do some kind of a take-home technical challenge. And sometimes I've gotten those that are timed. So it'll be time box that you only have like 2 hours or 4 hours to finish that particular challenge. And sometimes it's pretty open-ended. And then for those, I don't know what everyone else would say, but for the open-ended ones, I really put in a lot of time. I put in a lot of time, and I think sometimes the advice that you get is to don't go overboard. But if it's a job that I really, really want, I will really put in, like, make it look really, really nice. That is what I would say. I don't know what everyone else's experience with that is.
Yeah, I've gone overboard when there's not when there's not a time limit. That'll be like, there's my weekend.
Yep. Yeah, I will definitely put in something that looks pretty great. Were you gonna say something? No, okay. Okay, and then once they get your technical challenge, often you'll have what now, I don't know what this looks like for everyone, but in-person or video interviews. So you could meet with several people or over the course of a number of days. And some of those will be some technical kinds of interviews. Again, like, you'll be telling the same stories over and over, depending on how many interviews you have. So having those stories in your back pocket, like bringing that your past experience and your developer experience together to be able to answer those questions is really going to benefit you. You'll have some more kind of get to know you interviews, meeting members of the team, and those might feel a little bit different than meeting with like the hiring manager, for example. Some technical interviews can be more of a pair programming kind of thing where you're working side by side with somebody on a particular problem. You could have some kind of whiteboarding where you are literally standing in front of a whiteboard trying to solve technical problems that they're giving you. If you had some kind of a take-home technical challenge, you'll often have the opportunity to walk and talk through the code that you wrote. So it's really important to be able to do that. Like, I would practice doing that ahead of time before your interviews. If you had that technical take-home challenge, know what you did, know why you made the choices that you did. Maybe you had to make some trade-offs because you didn't have as much time as you wanted. And so, like, these are the reasons why I made those trade-offs. This is why I decided to use React, or this is why I decided to use this or that. It's really good to have, to be able to explain that, your technical decisions during those interviews.
So, the in-person interview. This is my favorite part of the journey to talk about. Here's some things and experience that have helped me deal with the very interesting kind of circle of life of emotions that comes with interviewing. The first thing is to understand that yes, in-person interviews can be very draining. Whether you're introvert, extrovert, super social, non-super social, neurodivergent, neurotypical, no matter what kind of abilities you have, you're meeting with 7 to 9 potentially human beings over a 6 to 8 hour period. That is draining. So one thing I always tell folks is, for me, what's helped in my experience was to get the better night of sleep I got, generally the better I was able to kind of take on the day, depending on the environment. When you're going technical with these interviews, there's almost nothing worse than complete and utter silence. Remember that you're evaluating them the same way they're evaluating you. So if they don't have any more questions, pull some out that actually matter to you, right? Like, one question I ask everybody is, no matter how minute or how large, what's one problem you're trying to fix at your company? Even if it's the toilet paper sucks. The reason why I ask that question in particular is because if someone says, I can't think of anything that's a challenge here, then either you found Nirvana, in which case I might want to be there before everyone else finds out, or there's something there that people are like, you don't have to crap on the company you work for, right? You can love who you work for. There's always something to improve, right? So finding out the things that matter to you as you do these interviews are important. I think what's helped me understand how I performed in an in-person interview, which can also be nerve-wracking from person to person, because you're like, did I say something stupid? What did I do? Is at the end of an interview, I go home, or sometimes I go out and have a drink or two. Depends on if I was in my 20s or my 30s. In my 20s, maybe it's a few drinks. I actually have a journal for all my interviews to help me understand what questions I struggled with, which questions I thought I aced. Let me actually see if I aced those questions, because I might be wrong. I might leave and be like, I know everything about X. And they could have just been nodding along because I was actually completely wrong, right? It's a way for me to also get all that anxiety out. And then I can look back in a month's time and say, okay, a theme I'm noticing from the last 4 job interviews that I got all no's on is that there's this one thing in particular I struggle with, right? In the beginning for me, it was whiteboards. Cognitively, I hate whiteboards for writing actual syntactic code because I've never used it that way, right? I've only used it to discuss ideas or discuss architecture, blah, 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 blah. But by actually writing down the notes, I started to see the theme, which it really was the syntax part. I just don't like having to write perfect syntax on a whiteboard under a pressurized environment where I can't see it run and actually do the things I would normally do as an engineer. So I had to figure out my ways to get around that or to work through that. But it helps a ton to be able to, at least it helped me a ton to be able to understand exactly where my frustrations lie in all the parts of that process and to get better at it. If there's something you don't know, don't be afraid to say you don't know. It may sound counterintuitive, but as someone who has hired people and as someone who clearly has been hired, sometimes probably less often than actually been hired. My win-loss record in terms of interviews is very interesting. It's fun. Everybody wants to see your thought process. Everybody wants to know, what kind of engineer am I going to be working with? Should this person join my team? One of the best ways to understand that is to create a dialogue, whether you know something like the back of your hand or you don't know it at all, right? Because when you're on the job and you come across something that you don't know, how you respond to not knowing is going to determine how successful you are there, right? And if it's a highly collaborative place and you're highly collaborative in your approach, you can show that you have the skills and just maybe have an experience gap in this one piece, but that you have everything else. And the way you approach that problem solving and finding out that info can help show what kind of engineer you would be. Those things helped me a ton in terms of in-person interviews. I would say coffee, but coffee has not helped me a lot. I just got jittery and sweated all the time. That's a personal thing for me. I lay off caffeine for interviews. Mileage may vary. Maybe you might need tons of caffeine. Just things to note.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of benefit from really reflecting on interviews as I go, like journaling about an interview. Oh, what did I miss? What did I not understand? That's been super valuable for me, and it always helps me in subsequent interviews. Awesome. Okay, staying motivated through the job search, because it is challenging. So I like to create little attainable goals for myself. Like today, I'm going to apply for 2 jobs, no matter what they are. I'm going to apply for 2 jobs every single day. And if I can check that off my list, I accomplished the thing that I needed to accomplish. Do not be afraid, please, to apply for jobs, even if you think that you don't tick all of the boxes. Like if it sounds like an interesting job and it feels like it's within your grasp, go for it. Even if maybe it doesn't feel like, if it's a stretch, you feel like you should apply for it. Practicing answering interview questions is really great. You can Google all kinds of like behavioral interview questions, the kind of questions, tell me about a time that you blah, 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 and what did you do? Those are behavioral interview questions. And then practice answering technical questions that you can also Google, and try to relate those back to your stories that you have ready to go in your back pocket. Practicing skills, find an open source project that's interesting to you to contribute to. Gatsby, I have not contributed to Gatsby, but they seem like a really great place to start for open source contribution. They have like one-on-one pairing sessions with people to help people get started contributing to open source, and that's a great thing to talk about in interviews. Work on a personal project. Keep working on the Collab Lab project. Like that can be a project that you piggyback off of and create more features. Writing technical blog posts will help you study and learn. And I guarantee that other people will be interested in reading what you have to write. Like we think that, oh, everybody must know that, but no, it's not true. If it's something that you don't know, guaranteed there are other people that don't know that information. And then kind of relating back to what Scott was saying, if you're not sure what kind of job that you're looking for, apply for a bunch of different kinds of jobs. And even if the company, you're like, oh, I've never heard of that company. I don't know how interesting that seems. Like it could end up being like the perfect fit for you. So don't be afraid to apply for jobs that maybe seem like, oh, I don't know if I'm interested in that. And finally, like the more you interview, the better that you'll get at it. Just keep plugging away and you will get a job. So what other questions do people have? It's getting super late. I'm very sorry.
I have one question. On your resume, it says that this is like super kind of like off topic, but it says that you like have experience in mustache. How did you find certain like areas to like sharpen your skills in?
How did I find?
Like what like attracted you to learn mustache versus something else?
Oh, it was just, honestly, that was just a technology that I had used at my first job. So it was just through different experiences, I just list the skills that I feel pretty comfortable using, but that was something that I had used, mustache templating at my first job. Cool. So I'll post these slides and then we can continue the conversation in Slack too. As you have questions, please post them in Slack. And then as you're going through the interview process, please always reach out to us at Collab Lab for help or information or anything that we can do for you. Like that's what we're here for. Cool. All right. Let's do, so we've talked, oh, don't move that one. Okay, so we've talked already about what the plan is for this week. We're gonna work together as a group. which I think will be fantastic. And then we have 3 issues left. Let's see, 15, 16, and 17. As a user, I want the shopping list screen to look pretty. I'm not even going to open them up. But these are mock-ups that it could look like, but it seems like you already have kind of a design and aesthetic that you're going for. So it's making the shopping list screen look pretty, the item detail screen look pretty, and the add an item screen to look pretty. That is the mission this week.
I feel pretty. I guess we don't need breakout rooms today since
Yeah.
You don't.
thinking about talking about tackling as a group.
We already broke
Yep.
out.
I think in our group chat, we should just figure out what time to meet up and figure out how we want to tackle the pretty of things.
Mm-hmm. And if we're going to go ahead with the making the modal a part of that prettification, that's another little bit, I guess, to add in there.
Yeah.
So to keep in the theme with me using Living on a Prayer to mark where we are in our course journey, we're at the part where we have that little refrain where instead of going into the "you've got to hold on, ready or not, you live for the fight when it's all that you've got." Whoa, that's the part of the course we're at right now, right before the end. Oh man, I keep forgetting that this is going on YouTube.
Still recording.
But yes, my future idea for anything that has weekly sprints, I'm going to name them after a specific part of Living on a Prayer. You need the lyric name to name the sprint.
So we're in the pre-chorus.
How's everyone feeling? It's, you know, the final week.
Good. It's kind of shocking how fast it went. Feels like it went by quickly.
Yeah.
And it's been fun.
Yeah, it's been very fun.
Look how much y'all did in 7 weeks.
I can't believe this has been 2 months. Like, I feel literally like it's been a lifetime.
It's gone so fast. You might say it's like a shot through the heart.
All right. Amazing work this week. Everything looks fantastic. I cannot wait to see what the rest of the app looks like. Thank you for sticking with us over time. Have a wonderful week. Reach out for help. We'll be there for you. And good luck.
That's another Bon Jovi song.
All right. I'm going to pause recording. Great job.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.
Talk to you tomorrow.